warm welcome. Thanks for tuning in to CNN News 18. You're watching the explosive weekend debate with me, Kritsween Walia. Well, viewers, the Prime Minister successfully concluded his two-day visit to Kuwait, which is historic in many ways and for starts special because it's a first such visit by an Indian Prime Minister in 43 years. This visit also saw the Prime Minister being conferred with Kuwait's highest honor, the Order of Mubarak al-Kabeer. Previously, the order has been awarded to heads of state, foreign sovereigns and members of royal families. In total, this makes for the 20th international honor given to the Prime Minister by a foreign country. The Prime Minister held extensive talks with the Crown Prince of State of Kuwait and also his counterpart, the Prime Minister of Kuwait. Key MOUs were signed. Discussions revolved around cooperation in food security, defense, civil aviation, culture, sports, and several such areas of concern. In fact, officials in the know-how of the interactions opined that the talks between the two leaders focused on exploring ways to take India-Kuwait ties to new heights. And in a special gesture, the Prime Minister of Kuwait personally came to see off Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the airport upon his departure. But the opposition led by Congress here in India once again has resorted to critiquing the Prime Minister's address to the Indian diaspora in Kuwait by stating that though the Prime Minister advocates for quote-unquote world brotherhood abroad, his rhetoric within India fuels division between Hindus and the minorities. Since Indian domestic and foreign policy are intertwined, one's left wondering, wouldn't Modi government's relationship with these Muslim majority nations suffer a setback if minorities were indeed being singled out here in India? Instead, why are these nations one after the other awarding him with their top honors? We open that up in just a bit, but first a look at the top voices, including an excerpt from the Prime Minister's address to the Indian diaspora yesterday.
भारत भी आज इनोवेशन पर बल दे रहा है, अपनी इकोनॉमी को लगातार मजबूत कर रहा है। ये दोनों लक्ष्य एक दूसरे को सपोर्ट करने वाले हैं।
जितने मुल्क सारे प्रधानमंत्री मिलके घूमे होंगे, आपने अकेले घूम लिया। कुवैत से आप देश के लिए क्या लेके आएंगे, देखना ये है।
यहाँ नफरत फैलाएंगे और बाहर प्रेम की भाषा और शांति की भाषा बोलते हैं। ये उनका चरित्र है।
Let's quickly go across to our guest joining us this evening at 9 p.m. We have Senior Fellow ORF Sushant Sareen along with National Spokesperson of the BJP Shehzad Poonawala. Still waiting for the other guests. My first question will go to the opposition. But for now, Shehzad, I want to understand from you what your take is. We've played out two reactions for viewers, just a while ago of what the Congress thinks. Somebody says this is once again a PR stunt. What will Modi bring back home from these kind of international visits? And there are those in the Congress who say that नफरत की राजनीति यहाँ तक सीमित है, सिर्फ बाहर उनको प्रेम याद आता है. How would you respond, Shehzad?
Let me begin by the last thing first. What is nafrat ki rajniti? Nafrat ki rajniti, Kritsween, is when 1969 Ahmedabad riots, 512 Muslims killed. 1970 Jalgaon, 100 Muslims killed. 1980 Moradabad, 1500 killed. 1983 Nelly, 3000 killed. 1984 Bhiwandi, 146 killed. 1990 Hyderabad, 365 Muslims killed. 1992 Surat, 152 killed. 1993 Mumbai, in which they accused the Uddhav Sena, 1000 killed. 2013 Muzaffarnagar, scores others killed. These were the riots that the Congress party gave, except for giving riots, poverty, garibi, and lack of education. What has Congress party done for Muslims? Let's take comparison of Muslims in Gujarat and Muslims of Bengal, and I tell you 4 parameters: education, health, financial services, and level of income. Gujarat BJP government has been there in power for a long time. West Bengal, no BJP government. On every of these parameters, and Sushant Sareen is there to testify, ex-diplomat is there to testify, Gujarat Muslims are doing much better than the Bengal Muslims. Why is that? And lastly, today when Prime Minister Modi has got the highest civilian award from Kuwait, this is not the first time he has got it. Look at out of the total awards he has got, highest civilian awards, most pious nation which is considered by Muslims, Saudi Arabia has given him the highest prestigious civilian award. Most prosperous countries, UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait have given him awards. Most emotionally connected Muslim country, Palestine, because for us, the Muslim world, the Palestinian cause is most emotionally connected. That country has given, or that Palestine state has given the award. Most orthodox country, Afghanistan has given him the highest civilian award. Most intellectually stimulating country in the Muslim world, Egypt, Cairo University is there. That has given him the award. Are you telling me that Rashid Alvi knows better about Muslims and their condition than these countries? So therefore, unless Mr. Syed Abbas is saying that all these countries, including Saudi Arabia, because for every Muslim, Mecca, Medina is very pious, all these countries are siding with Modi for some ulterior purpose, I don't think even Syed Abbas will say that. They should prove what they are saying on the anvil of facts.
Okay. Deepak Vora, former diplomat, is with us as well. And Syed Asad Abbas, political analyst, doesn't need any introduction anymore since Shehzad's done that job for me. But Syed, how would you respond? You know, to add to what Shehzad is saying, the Grand Mufti of Egypt actually said that India is a country where diversity is being protected and it's a country where there is inclusiveness. And yet, there are leaders of the Congress party that want to say that Muslims, continue to be targeted, they continue to be sidelined, they're not prospering under Narendra Modi's governance, so on and so forth. Where are facts here?
Well, my dear friend Shehzad Poonawalla brought in some very interesting facts. There are no two ways about it. As always, he's a fantastic spokesperson who's got his fact right. One fact he got wrong, which is that do I consider Saudi Arabia as one of the most pious country? No, sir. Kaaba, Makkah is pious. But to me, my Prophet says, Hubbul Watan, love for your country. To me, my motherland, Mera Bharat Desh, is the most pious country because it is the same land, sir, where I do my sajda when I pray for namaz. And it is the same Ganga which we use for a wuzu. Next point, coming to the point, absolutely, I feel proud today, Kritsween ji, that my Honorable Prime Minister of my country has been given highest civilian honor award. And it's a regular feature for a global leader like Modi. The fact is, where it hurts me is when leaders of his party like Ramesh Biduri in the Temple of Democracy come out and say Ugravadi, Atankwadi. Why? Because the other member of parliament is a Muslim. I think this really lets down the Bharatiya Janata Party. Not just that. When our Prime Minister says writers can be identified by their dress, when our Prime Minister says, ye log tumhara Mangal Sutra chinenge, not just that. Many times,
but you think these Muslim countries could not care less for the quote-unquote plight of Muslims in India, if that were the case?
Let me take a step ahead and tell you this.
Why would they award the Prime Minister with their top honors? And we have the list with us, Syed Asad Abbas.
Absolutely.
From Afghanistan to Palestine to now Kuwait. The list is endless and he's made it to 20 awards so far.
I will take a step ahead and make a very controversial statement here. The Muslim countries have their own particular vested interest. If the Muslim countries really cared about any Muslims, they would speak for Gaza. They would speak for Palestine. They wouldn't keep mum for Uyghur Muslims being killed in China. So there is a duplicity and hypocrisy in these so-called Muslim countries who do nothing about. They do not care about really Muslims living anywhere outside their own country. If they did, they would speak about what is happening in Pakistan. They would speak about what is happening in China. To me, ma'am, I'm absolutely delighted that our Honorable Prime Minister has been presented this with these awards and highest civilian honors. But the fact of the matter, Kritsween ji, is that I'd like to conclude in the next 30 seconds that serious action must be taken by all respective political parties whose leaders make communal remarks, who do this politics, which is absolutely not okay. I'd like to really list out my dear friend Shehzad of BJP.
That's very neutral commentary by you, Syed Asad Abbas, and one's expecting stern comments when it comes to these kind of arguments, which perhaps lack merit today. But I'm going to rephrase what you just said and pose it to Sushant Sareen. Sushant, do you think raw self-interest is the operating factor here in all of these countries, Muslim countries, honoring the Prime Minister one after the other?
that is the basic principle on which international relations are run, isn't it? So no country talks to you if their interests or they do not attach their interests with you, or they do not feel that India is an important country with which they need to develop good relations. So I think that is a settled principle in international relations, and I don't see any reason why anybody needs to be apologetic about it. Every country does that. But aside of that, even when you have significant interests in another country, if there was any egregious violence or some incident, some kind of genocide, as many of these guys from the opposition very often allege, genocide is taking place, etc., etc. All that hyperbole that comes out of these people's mouth. If that was indeed true, you would not see these countries reach out to India, interact with India at the level at which they are doing. Nobody tells these countries to give the prime minister the highest award. It's not as though somebody goes and negotiates with them that the prime minister will only come if you are giving him the highest award. They feel that this is an important gesture to make to somebody from India, the prime minister of India, which is a very important country in their own calculation, and the importance which the prime minister is giving to those countries. Can you imagine? Kuwait is such an important country in terms of energy security, in terms of our diaspora. And for 40 years, no prime minister visited that country. UAE is such a pivotal country for our interests in the Middle East. And what, for almost 2 decades, nobody went out there. So just look at the way how and how much we have gained from our, outreach to these countries. India's relations with the Middle East are better than ever before I think, in Indian history. So the point is that, one, the prime minister has made a move. Second, these countries have also attached their interest to it. And most importantly, they do make some noises when something untoward happens in India. But everybody knows that there's no mass exodus taking place from India, like happens, for example, in the case of Myanmar. It happened in Myanmar, or it happens in many of the other countries. And they also know that when the Prime Minister of India goes, he's not the Prime Minister of Pakistan who goes with a begging bowl. The Prime Minister of India goes to talk business, to talk about mutually beneficial relations between India and these countries. And I think that is something which they appreciate. They see business
But don't you think, Sushant, selectivity is a problem here? Because the same logic then applies to, the Western media outlets who at ends go on to condemn what's happening to minorities in India, but have nothing to say about what's happening in Bangladesh, right?
Can I just add a sentence on this before the ambassador comes in? The Western media, they come from a completely different biased background. It is their ideological conflict within their own countries that they are now, taking to other countries like India. So if they think that there is a right-wing government,
and that's heavily being cited by the opposition here in India. That's why it becomes relevant, Sushant, to an extent, even if we do not want to give it importance or attach importance to it.
No, but I don't know why we give importance to most of these Western media organizations. They are so clueless. They have parachute journalists who don't know their front side from their back as far as India is concerned. And these are people who comment on India, India's complexities, India's problems, the complications that are in India, the kind of political setup there is in India. They live in a tiny box. They live in an echo chamber. They come and interact with people who they give junkets, who they give writing contracts, who they give professorships and lecturerships in universities abroad. And that is the ecosystem they operate in. And that ecosystem actually benefits both monetarily as well as professionally from interaction with these Western characters. And for them, if it's bad-mouthing India, so much the better, because so much the better the payoff is. So I think, leave the Western media aside. These guys are more serious in the Middle East. And I think it's good that our relations with them are growing leaps and bounds.
Okay. And that's all that needs to be focused on, Mr. Deepak. I see Shehzad and Saida Asad Abbas wanting to come in. So before I go across to them, your opening remarks. To an extent, on India's part as well, all of these efforts are being done to strengthen India's security, trade, defense cooperation, energy cooperation, most importantly, if we talk about the Middle East.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, ma'am. Always a pleasure to be with you on CNN. And the complaint is that you get Mr. Poonawala
Mr. Sareen and Mr. Abbas, whose individual and collective wisdom is much greater than mine. I'm in a very remote part of Odisha at the moment, and the internet is a little unstable. But this morning, I attended, Mr. Sareen, an event at a Siddhi Vinayak school as a guest, and the kids performed a Sufi dance. Did you say something about Muslims being exploited in India? Happy birthday. Now, let me tell you very quickly, ma'am. We were talking about the OIC, people do. 69 was when it was founded. India was invited, and then we were disinvited. There was a funny character called Yahya Khan threw a tantrum and said, I'll walk out. Pakistan was then the largest Muslim country. And so we were told that Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad Shah was leading our delegation. 50 years later, UAE, 2019, we are the guest of honor. Late Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj was leading our delegation. Now, ma'am, our present relationship with the OIC, if I may sum it up in one phrase, reminds me of the advertisement in the 1960s for the Virginia Slim cigarettes, which they were being promoted as the ideal cigarettes for women, Virginia Slims. The catchphrase was, they showed a woman smoking a cigarette and it said, you've come a long way, baby. And I believe that between India and the OIC, the individual members of the OIC, you mentioned 20 awards. Please count how many of them are Islamic countries. 8. Why do they do this? Why do they need India? Because many of them realize that geoeconomics and geopolitics trumps geo-religion. They want security. India is a net security provider. We want energy. They are willing to give it to us. Everybody is acting out of his or her own self-interest. And now they don't care about what others say, that India is doing this to its Muslims, that to its Muslims. Even the D8 characters who were meeting in Cairo recently refused to play ball with this Pakistan on our western border. So the fact is that in the Islamic world, there is growing recognition that if there is a country where all are equal, ma'am, and I say this with considerable pride as an Indian ambassador, they realize
Deepak
that
ji,
it is
to really place the entire topic on the table, would in that sense, self-interest of a particular country like Kuwait, for instance, take precedence over brotherhood, Muslim brotherhood? If we talk about, the sense that the opposition tries to kick in constantly of the Muslim minority in the country feeling a sense of alienation. Diplomatically, how does it operate for these kind of countries?
I couldn't hear you very clearly, but if the question was addressed to me,
yes.
All I'd say is that in diplomacy, the first thing we are taught is the Felix Schwarzenberg principle of the 1850s, where he commented that self-interest, nothing matters. Forget about all these lofty ideals. If I do not benefit from a relationship, I'll walk out of it. That's the most bracing thing I've heard. There's no such thing as gratitude in international relations, and there's no thing as brotherhood if it conflicts with self-interest. What more can I say?
Okay,
Absolutely,
great. Beautifully summed up. Shehzad wants to come in. Yes, Shehzad.
While it is true that every country is dictated by its self-interest in foreign policy, but you also know that when a Hamas chief or Hezbollah chief dies, you are seeing the reaction in India too by certain section of Muslims. So there is a feeling of common Muslim brotherhood solidarity that cuts across the nationalistic lines, and they come for a ummah feeling. And therefore, even when these countries, when they give their highest civilian awards, they cannot ignore that feeling because they have domestic pulls and pressures that they have to cater to. So what I'm trying to say in effect is that if Modi ji was as devious, devilish as is being presented by certain section of Thekedars of Muslim vote bank, then these countries would certainly bow down to that larger ummah sentiment. Point number one. Point number two, look, today Mr. Syed Abbas has said Ramesh Biduri. Ramesh Biduri, whatever he said at that point of time, Rajnath Singh ji had apologized for it, and Ramesh Biduri did not get the ticket of Lok Sabha. But I have read out a list of 10 big riots where Muslims have been chopped and killed. And please tell me one person who has been convicted by the Congress governments in that time. You will not be able to answer even one answer for that. Thirdly, what is the problem? The problem is that when CAA law is brought, Syed Abbas, not Syed Abbas personally, but the people he is representing, they say this is anti-Muslim. They say it's Islamophobic. When triple talaq law is brought and triple talaq is abolished by the Supreme Court, they say it is anti-Muslim, it is to target Muslims. When we talk about UCC, which Ambedkar ji wanted, they say it's anti-Muslim. When Afzal Guru gets hanged, they say it's anti-Muslim. When Yaqub gets hanged, they say it's anti-Muslim. This is the problem. For them, Muslim is not Abdul Kalam Azad. For them, Muslim APJ Abdul Kalam. For them, Muslim is not Ustad Bismillah Khan. For them, Muslim is not Veer Abdul Hamid. They have never gone on the maqbara of these people. They will go to Aurangzeb. They will go to Babur. They will go to Yaqub Memon. This is the problem, that they identify the Muslim with Yaqub Memon and Babur, and therefore in Sambal issue also, where it's very clear that there was a Harihar Mandir, they will champion the cause of Babur. They will not stand with the facts.
Besides, why do these visits, Syed Asad Abbas, seem to irk the opposition so much? It is incumbent upon, the Prime Minister of any country to ensure greater cooperation where our country's interests lie, be it trade, energy. We've been talking about all of these crucial sectors, especially when it comes to some of these Middle Eastern nations. Why is it that for 43 long years we did not see an Indian Prime Minister visit a country so crucial as Kuwait? And why, if it's happening today, is the opposition so angry?
No. I've always believed, Kritswinji, that when it comes to matters of national interest for the best of our country, I think Modi ji is doing the right thing. Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, what works well for the economy of the country.
But a lot of your friends
we all
don't
get
believe
rich
that,
together.
Syed. Why is it that A, they're calling it a PR stunt, or they're saying what is it that Modi ji is bringing back? I mean, we need to really move past these futile arguments.
I will answer that. Certainly, yes, there are no two ways about it. We must move past. We should not be petty about it. And one good point my dear friend Sushant Sareen made, which I also made, but he was more clear about it. Look at what Imran Khan used to do. He had this pseudo sense of affection towards us Indian Muslims, whereas the same man did nothing or did not even speak a word against what's happening with the Uyghur Muslims in China. Why? Because he's there with the begging bowl with China. That should be called out. Not just that. If you look at the geopolitical front, where is the Ummah? Where is the brotherhood? Iran, Syria, Lebanon on one side. But Deepak Vora Sahab will agree with me. Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi on one side. Where is the Ummah? All these Muslim countries, so-called Muslim countries, do not care about each other. It is only the power control. That's about it. US is such a big ally of the Saudi Arabia. How would you say that? And Iran, US is the biggest enemy. The fact of the matter, all these countries have vested interest. And let me tell you, what happened in Gaza, what is happening in Gaza is genocide. If you do not know well, you've closed your eyes, ears to all the deaths which is taking place of the little innocent children. And the final point, my dear friend Shehzad spoke about triple talaq. I thank the Bajpa government for letting it go. Why? If you look at Islam, if you look at Quran, triple talaq never existed. It was only a Saudi Arabic regime which used to pass it on as a culture and tradition. The fact opposition had difference with it only because of certain provisions of the bill. No doubt, I will stand by the fact triple talaq had to go. And the final point is, we the Muslims of this country must condemn any terror act and stand by the government, stand by any political party which favors our government.
Syed Asad Abbas, that not all your friends, were unequivocally in support of the triple talaq, and that's for all of us to know. But before I go across to Sushant for a follow-up question, Shehzad, I believe, wants to rebut. Yes, Shehzad.
No, I am glad that Syed Abbas is taking such a positive and progressive line, but I wish that when the CAA law was being opposed and Muslims were being fed poison, that isse aapki nagrikta chali jayegi. At that time, I remember Syed Abbas had done a few debates where he was advocating against CAA law. No, 1 second, sir, I did not interrupt. I did not interrupt. Mr. Abbas, I did not interrupt you. I did not interrupt you. Don't. Secondly, I completely have full solidarity for the innocent children of Gaza. But ask Mr. Deepak ji and ask Mr. Sushant Sareen that more children have died in Yemen at the bombs of Muslim nations. Why this Madam Priyanka Vadra is not wearing the bag for Yemenis children? If she is considering children's lives, then she should cry for Gaza children also, Palestinian children also, and for Yemeni children also. But in one case, you can make Israeli look bad. In one case, you can make Hindus look bad. So you will carry that bag. And then in the other case, you will go silent. This shows that vote bank politics dominates. इन्होंने इतने वर्षों तक मुसलमानों को भड़काया. And if they are against hate speech, then what is Sanatan Samapt? What is Sanatan Bimari? What is Ram Mandir Prime Minister as Nachkana?
Essentially,
These
even
kinds
when
of
Prime Minister
statements
visits a
nobody
country like
criticizes.
Kuwait, is limited to vote bank. Syed, that's what the BJP continues to say, that you are speaking against the Prime Minister when it comes to these kind of honors for him, these kind of fruitful visits of his to any Muslim nation or any nation with a Muslim population of over 50% just for pure vote bank gains here in India. But Sushant, I have a... No, I'll come back to you. I need to go across to the others.
Answer that. 10
Okay, no
seconds,
more than
Krithwin
15
ji.
then. No more than 15
Thank you.
then. Quickly.
Appreciate, thank you. The fact of the matter, all the people of our country needs to understand, when the Prime Minister of our country is appreciated and honored, it is a pride for the whole nation, Krithwin ji. That needs to be understood. Matbhed hona chahiye, manbhed nahi. I've always believed in that. And the fact, my good friend
Arey,
Shahzad
Congress
mentioned
ko
about
samjhao.
CA NRC. The fact is CA NRC is completely different from triple talaq, sir. I believe a law in the country should
अरे
not be
CA बोला
This
NRC
thing is
कहाँ
being
बोला?
spoken
We are
of.
secure.
Where have I said NRC?
Anyway,
We are
Saida
secure.
Sadabas, what's being said is why bring in these comparisons, this narrative when the Prime Minister is visiting abroad, when he's not representing the BJP alone, he's representing the interests of all of us here. But Sushant, what do you have to say to what
you
was
for the
mentioned
time,
by
I appreciate it.
Shehzad? If compelled to toe a line, a country, for instance, Iran, which shares a compatible equation with India, will it toe the line beyond a certain point? Shehzad believes so. There are those who've said no, everybody is here for their own self-interest. How do you view this? Because India also, of course, is looking at its own foreign policy gains.
So Krithwin, countries which are pragmatic, and most of the Arab countries have turned out to be very, very pragmatic and very sensible and very progressive in many ways. Even though a country like Kuwait is in many ways quite orthodox compared to, for example, the UAE, even then, in some ways, it's a very pragmatic place, right? When you
Pragmatic is the
look
word.
at some of these
Yes.
countries, they will engage with India partly in their own self-interest and partly because they think India brings a lot to the table,
Yeah.
right? Politically, economically, every which way you look at it. Also, from the point of view of the Indian diaspora, the Indian diaspora does not indulge in any kind of political activity in these countries. They stick to the law. You look at how the UAE, Saudi Arabia, many other countries are cutting down on visas for Pakistanis, for example,
Okay.
because they go and create law and order problems. They're involved in crime. They're involved in political agitation. The Indians, whether Muslim, Hindu, or whichever other religious persuasion, they go stick to the law of the land and carry out their work.
Okay.
And
Sushant,
work
running
well.
out of time, and I do want to go across to Mr. Deepak as well for the last comments. Mr. Deepak, that said, we should all be in agreement that nobody is going to force, let's say the UAE royal leadership to, in that sense, work hand in hand with the Prime Minister. Self-interest cannot be pushed to that an extent. Your parting thoughts, sir.
You are absolutely right. As far as Kuwait is concerned, the millions of people watching your show would be interested in knowing till about 30 years ago, the Emir of Kuwait had a house, a personal house on Marine Drive in Mumbai, where he used to come for rest and recreation. Until the 60s, the Indian currency was legal tender in Kuwait. Ma'am, the relationship is very deep. And ultimately, may I just put it to you like this, what was Billu Bhai Clinton of Punjab's punchline when he was fighting the elections in the United States? It's the economy, stupid. And they know that India is where the future is.
Okay, India is where the future is.
Hit the
Thank
nail
you.
on the
Thank
head,
you so
sir.
much, gentlemen. That's all the time we have. Hope to take this conversation forward on another day. That's all the time we have. That's all we could pack for you in this edition of the Explosive Weekend Debate. Thanks for watching.